Hi class, I wanted to take the opportunity to talk a little bit about the research paper. I've looked at all of your literature reviews and comments have been left on your Google Docs, so please take a look at my feedback. But I also wanted to sort of go over some of the concepts of the research paper because I think it will be beneficial. So far, the biggest problem that I've seen in your papers is organizing your papers, organizing the information in your papers. What you guys are doing right is you're following the instructions and you're using the basic organization. So you have an introduction, it has all of the points in it you need to have, it has the 3 research questions, and then you have a lit review. But the lit review is not organized as well as it could be. So I want to talk about how you can improve your literature reviews. And let's do that by revisiting the point of a literature review. A literature review should catch the reader up to your topic and explain everything you know about it based on your research. So basically, you can think about the literature review as explaining your topic to me like I'm 5. Start with the basics and then get more detailed. You want to assume that the person reading your paper knows nothing about your topic, and what you're doing is you're using the literature review to catch them up on all of the knowledge of your topic before you go on to your major arguments where you're going to build a case for something. So if your topic is that elementary school students should be trained in collective intelligence, and they should use collective intelligence exercises in their elementary school classes, in order for me to make that argument, I'm going to have to tell you what collective intelligence is, and I'm going to have to explain what it has to do with education. So I'm going to have to explain it to you kind of like you're 5. And that's okay. That's what you want to do in the lit review. And you want to use this inverted pyramid style. You can see a little inverted pyramid down at the bottom. Really, all that's doing is reminding you that you need to start with the basics and then get more detailed. If you're 5 and I'm trying to explain collective intelligence to you, I can't just start by quoting some famous collective intelligence researchers. I'm going to have to start with the very basics. What is collective intelligence? How does it work? Why does it work? Where does it work? So I suggest imagine that you are not writing a paper. Instead, imagine that you're sitting down with a friend in some situation and you're looking for something to talk about, and you start sort of telling your friend about your topic. How would you explain it? If I asked you right now, explain your topic to me, how would you do that? You would start with the general and then you would get more specific. So as you write, think about your words more as telling someone rather than trying to build a research paper. I think if you're anything like me, you grew up sort of being told that research papers were full of big words, that research papers were hard to understand, that research papers were really dense and used lots of semicolons and things like that. And that's really not the case. Sometimes they do. But you're writing a research paper based on primary sources, so you're going to be quoting the people who do that. What you need to do is explain it in a way that is simple to understand. And so think about just telling someone about your topic. Don't set out to write a really complex, academic sounding research paper. Sit down with the goal of telling about your topic in the simplest, most direct way possible. So let's look at an example. If I was sitting around talking to a friend and I said something about collective intelligence and they say, I don't know what that is, how would I explain collective intelligence? Well, I would start by just saying what it is. Oh, you've never heard of collective intelligence? Well, it's the idea that individuals working collaboratively in groups produce knowledge that's sort of above and beyond any of the members' abilities. So what that means is when you get people together, working together, they create something that's really knowledgeable and special, even if they're not super smart people. And that's interesting because it means that when people work together, there's this sort of greater thing that emerges. And then I might go on, right? You start with the general, and then you start racking your brain for more to say. And what is there more to say? Well, you can get more specific. So I might say, collective intelligence, why do I care about it? Why is it important? Well, because what's happening is the internet. We have all these tools on the internet that allow collective intelligence groups to form and connects people. And when that happens, when people are connected online, you have the opportunity for collective intelligence. And that makes the internet really cool because it means that it can be a great resource. The world can get together on the internet and do things like make decisions, create new knowledge, discover knowledge, educate other people. You can do all kinds of amazing things online centered around collective intelligence. And then I might sort of think to myself, okay, I feel like I've explained it pretty well. I guess I should keep talking about it. What else can I say? Well, I'll get more specific. So I might talk about where collective intelligence has been used. I might say, yeah, it's been used in education, research, even gamers. Even gaming uses collective intelligence. And then I might even get more specific and sort of say, like, I think it's so amazing because there's 3 things we know about it. And I might say what those are. So just by sort of describing my topic, I end up creating an organization. Here are the things that I talked about. What collective intelligence is, why it's interesting, the tools that make it possible, what it turns the internet into, which is a place to work together, where it has been used and how, and then I gave 3 amazing facts about it. Well, in this case only 2. Diversity, when collective intelligence groups are more diverse, they're better. They come up with better intelligence. And group formation, when collective intelligence groups form, they sort of self-assemble, which is really interesting. So what I've just done is come up with an organization for my project, for my paper. I explain what it is, why it's interesting, that's very, very general, and then I get more specific. And I start out sort of saying, yeah, the internet makes it possible, and then I get more specific and I say exactly what about the internet makes it possible. And then I get more specific and I say how it's being used on the internet. And then I get more specific and I say 3 things we know about how it's getting used on the internet. So just by thinking about my paper as sort of a discussion that I'm having with someone, I'm able to form topic areas. I'm able to take my topic and break it into chunks that go from general to more specific. So after you sort of write this out and you think about how you would talk about it, go back and figure out where you learned everything from, and then make sure you add citations. This is very important. Pretty much everything in your paper needs to be cited. If you tell me that collective intelligence is used in education, you need to tell me, how do you know that? And if you say it's used here, here, and here in education, I need to know how you know that. So after you sort of explain it, and you have this sort of free form, oh, if I had to talk about it, here's what I talk about, you can go back in and figure out where you learned this. So I can go back in and I can say, okay, I talked about these 3 really amazing things. How do I know about diverse groups? So I can come in here and I can say, oh yeah, I learned it from here, and I can pull up my source and I can find the exact page number that I learned that from and type it in. Some of you may be able to do this as you go. Typically, when I write, I can remember where it's from, so I know that the discussion of diverse groups comes from the source. So as I write that, I can put the source, and I can go get the page number right away. Some of you, it might be easier to kind of go back and add the citation. And as you go through and you look for citation, if you can't cite something, it means you didn't learn it. It means you're making it up. And that doesn't necessarily mean you're doing anything bad. Sometimes your brain thinks it saw something or it understands something the wrong way. It's the way you can hear a commercial and think that you've heard that song before, but you haven't really. So if you can't cite something, get it out of there. And then figure out what needs more explanation. So for example, I talked about how it's being used in education, but I just said it was being used. I didn't really give any more details. So I would go back and I would start to type in the details. So I'd pull out my sources and I would start to type in what I learned from those sources. And then you want to make sure you group all these areas into paragraphs. So what it is should be a paragraph, how it's used on the internet should be a paragraph, how diversity affects it should be a paragraph. And for each of these paragraphs, start the paragraph by telling me the general topic area, and then explain the concept and present the research that supports it, and then explain why it's important. So why do we need to know this? So in the lit review, you're really catching people up. You're saying, here's everything we know about this topic. And you go from general to specific. And then in the major arguments section, you're going to sort of turn and you're going to say, you know, now that the reader's all caught up, what do you want him or her to believe? So you're making a statement or a prediction that you want the reader to believe. And you had to catch them up. You had to give them a lit review, because if they don't know anything about the topic, you can't even make an argument. They'll just look at you and go, well, I don't know if that's right or not. So you catch them up in the lit review, and then you start to make your arguments. And what you want the person to believe, that's your argument. And to support your argument, you're going to create smaller arguments that reinforce it. So for example, now that I've caught my listener, so I'm back to my example of sitting with someone and telling them about why I think collective intelligence is so interesting and telling them everything I know about it. What I might say next is, what I think is that collective intelligence should be taught in elementary school. So I'm going to take a position, and then I'm going to support that. To support that position, I have a few things that I think support it, a few smaller arguments. First, it's already used in education, and research tells us that it works, so I think we should use it. I think we should expand using it. Second, the internet is still advancing, and I think that kids need to be prepared, and I think that collective intelligence preparation will prepare them for it. And then I also know that civics education is disappearing, and of course I would want to cite my source on that. And my argument is that I think they can learn about communities by learning collective intelligence, and it would sort of bring civics back into school. And then my final argument would be that the world is smarter when collective intelligence works, and then I can give examples, and I can cite those examples. So what I'm doing in the major arguments section is I've already said everything I know about collective intelligence in my lit review. Now I'm going to make a position. I'm going to take a position. I'm going to say, I believe this. This should happen. This should not happen. People should be trained. They should be not trained. We should get rid of it. We should stop using it. We should switch to this. Something like that. And then I'm going to provide some smaller arguments that I think support that larger argument. Now for each paragraph of your major argument section, you're going to tackle one claim, one smaller argument. So these are going to be related to your thesis and your research question. And what you're going to do is you're going to state the claim, and then you're going to give evidence. And then you're going to explain how the data supports your thesis. So this goes back to explaining it to me like I'm 5. You're going to say something like, the internet is still evolving, and collective intelligence can help students, young students in elementary school, learn how to evolve with it. So that will be my claim. I'll provide evidence, and I'll cite my evidence. And then I'll explain how that data supports my thesis. So I'll say, I'm arguing that collective intelligence groups should be formed and taught in elementary school. And as you can see from this evidence, it will prepare them for the internet as it grows, to grow along with the internet. Then I'm going to provide some backing so I can bring in some additional logic or reasoning for this particular claim. And then I'm going to produce a counterclaim. So what is the claim that negates my thesis? So I might have a claim, maybe I've read a paper saying that collective intelligence education is too confusing for students. So I would present that counterclaim and cite it, and then I would provide evidence that negates it. So I would say, that's very interesting, but as we can see in this research study, the complexities of teaching it can be overcome, and that could be my rebuttal. So let me show you a paragraph from a successful research paper. This is a major arguments paragraph, and yes, it is very long, and it's cut off at the bottom as well. But this is a paper in which the student argued that local governments should train some of their staff members in social media so they can communicate with the public. So her argument is that local governments should spend money on social media training for their PR professionals. And one of the smaller arguments is that local governments, they're already using social media, but they're not really using it effectively for certain types of information. So training would help them use it more effectively. So that's her claim. Then she provides all of the evidence, and this right here is all evidence. And then she does the warrant, so she explains what that means, why this supports her thesis. She provides some additional logic. Then she discusses an opposing claim, an opposing view. Then she rebuts that view, and then she summarizes her argument here at the end. So I'm going to show you, I've called out these sections. Claim, lots of evidence, warrant, backing, counterclaim, and rebuttal. Every paragraph in your major argument section should use this format, and every claim should support your major argument. If you have any questions about your paper, if you want to send me something, or you have like a draft you're curious about, please feel free to. I've left comments in all of your lit reviews. If you reply to the comments, that will trigger an email to me, and I will be able to reply to your reply. So if there's comments you have questions about, or you want to make a comment on, hit reply, and I will be notified of that so we can have a conversation about my comments. If you need anything else, please let me know. I look forward to seeing the next part of your paper.